The home of the common Joe and the common Sally in the know, even more so than all those media talking heads.
Just want to start off today with a random topic, and that is my wife's brother, my brother-in-law, Ray Booth, just recently passed away a few days ago of sudden death, heart attack deal. He's a little bit older, so the whole connection deal with the COVID shot and whatnot may not really apply to him. But it just hits sort of close to home, and then you have all this stuff going on with COVID-19 possibly being linked to a lot of these younger athletes just dropping dead all of a sudden. It ain't like it's just one or two or even 7 or 8. This is like hundreds of athletes that have been dropping dead from this sudden death, heart attack kind of stuff. And it's just this. If that's going on, if we find out that that's going on, then we need to do something about it. At the risk of getting myself in trouble, I'm not really going to elaborate, but we really need to do something about this because I really believe this COVID-19 shot has long-term effects that you don't see right away. And you're now seeing these athletes who have these rigorous activities that they do. They put a lot of stress on their heart, of course, with exercise. That's what happens. You put a little stress on your heart and your arteries and whatnot. And we find out this is the case, man. There needs to be something done about all these politicians that were involved in it. I don't care if it's a Republican or a Democrat. Because, you know, Donald Trump was pushing that shot too, as well as Joe Biden. They were wanting to pay you to take it. When have you ever known the government to want to pay people to take medication? They usually want to rip your ass off and charge you thousands of dollars for medication. I don't see them paying me to take my metformin for my diabetes that could definitely kill me. But they want to pay you to take this that hadn't even been really tested on lab rats, but they want to test it on us. But I'm getting off on a rant and a rave there, but just keep my wife and her brother's family in your prayers in this pretty hard time for them and for myself. Now, let's get to the show. Well, here we are again, riding on in with that outlaw posse once again. That's right. This is the Outlaw College Football. That stands for the OCF, also known as JPC. That stands for Jesse Paul Clark on Facebook. Spelled J-E-S-S-E without the I. Also on Twitter at OCF Productions. Now, getting right to it here. The topic of the day is the Pac-12 about to kill itself? Are they basically hemorrhaging? And this guy named Kliavkoff, who I thought was supposed to do these great wonders for them because he was supposedly some kind of great businessman before he took over this spot, they continue to drag their feet and not be proactive. And exactly what got them in trouble, as I mentioned many times before with Kevin Warren and Big Ten, is they drug their feet and they just basically followed around the Big Ten like an old lost puppy, and they basically got kicked and pretty hard by the Big Ten when they took USC and UCLA, as we all know. And now they're struggling to get a TV deal, but the problem that is really fermenting from the Pac-12, in my opinion, it's been mentioned in numerous podcasts. Saw it on 365 Sports, where there's a guy named Dick Harmon of the Deserter. I think that's the name of the paper or the website that he works for out of Salt Lake City, basically saying that the Pac-12 is being a little snobbish and elitist about this thing going forward. And it's like, don't y'all see what's going on? It's right in front of you. Oregon, Washington, Utah, Colorado, Arizona State. It's right in front of you, man. You're letting these elitist colleges that are left in the Pac-12, the Stanfords and the Californias, lead you astray, man. You need to do away with Stanford, California, most definitely. And not to mention that USC, not so much UCLA, even though they were involved in it, USC basically really put the screws to the Pac-12 and continue to do so. And the fact that I've heard from numerous sources that USC and their skittle shitters from LA don't want to play with Oregon and Washington anymore. They don't so much care about Stanford and California, I don't think. They don't see them as a threat. But as far as recruiting goes, Oregon has been on a tear and taken many great recruits from Southern Cal. And I think Southern Cal basically told the Big Ten, hey, we'll come, but please don't invite anybody else from the West, because this is going to be our way. This is going to be our label that we can take into homes and recruiting homes and tell them, hey, look, you can go play in the Pac-12, which is basically dissolving itself and becoming a G5 conference in a way. Or you can come play for one of the biggest conferences that put out some of the most NFL talent of any other conference outside the SEC. Oregon and Washington, if they were in the Big Ten, they could say the same thing. But they're not going to be. And right now, USC needs as much edge as they can get, considering that Oregon out-recruited them with a brand new coach that's never been a head coach before. And while you got Lincoln Riley over here, who was supposed to be the messiah of USC football, has yet to crack the top 10 in recruiting yet since he's been there. According to what outlet you look at, I guess. But the Pac-12 needs to get their shit together, man. Now, I heard they were going to get a deal with Amazon and possibly ESPN on the back side of things, maybe the ESPN 2 or 3 or ESPN News or whatever. But now they've slid down to Apple TV. And whether they realize it or not, and whether Apple realizes it or not, they probably don't, because they're oblivious and they're elitist when they're not even elite anymore. Not everybody has Apple, just so you know. I'm an Android user. So if I lived out on the West Coast, then guess what? I'm not going to get to watch Oregon and Washington play if I'm an Oregon or Washington fan. If I got an Android or some other kind of phone, I'm most likely won't get to watch it unless there's some kind of offer of paying to watch it, or maybe some kind of little subscription you can get and not have to go to using Apple phones. That may be in play, but still, I don't see people doing that. They just don't take football seriously enough out there, especially with Stanford and Cal. And Oregon and Washington hold a key here. If they would just buck up and say, hey, look, we're not doing this anymore, and just join either the SEC or the Big 12, then suddenly that little plan that USC and the Big 10 had sort of goes straight to hell. Because I don't think they think that Oregon and Washington would join the Big 12, and they definitely wouldn't think they'd join the SEC. Now, if Oregon and Washington would join the SEC, USC and Lincoln Riley wanting that little unfair advantage that they're always looking for, because that's what skittle shitters do, they would no longer have that unfair advantage if Oregon and Washington joined the SEC, as I mentioned in my last podcast. Matter of fact, Oregon and Washington may have a bigger advantage over them at that point. But I just don't get what the Pac-12's thinking. They won't even go out and add San Diego State. I mean, how long are you going to drag your feet on that? Go out and get San Diego State and get back to Southern California market before the proactively thinking Big 12 and Brett Yormark come in and scoop up San Diego State too. And at that point, you ain't going to have any Southern California market unless you go get, I don't know, El Centro State. I think there's a San Diego University too. It's a Division II school. Maybe you can move them up, put them in the Pac-12. I don't know. Maybe Portland State can become an in-state rival for Oregon and Oregon State. I don't know what you're going to do. Go get Hawaii maybe. I don't know. But if you keep dragging your feet, then the Pac-12 is going to dissolve. And we're going to see one of the most historically oldest conferences go by the wayside. And it's going to come down to just the Big 12, the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 10 at that point. And eventually, when that grant of rights thing goes away for the ACC, I think it, like I said in the last podcast, you're going to have it down to the Big 3. And that's just the way it's going to be. But I just don't get the Pac-12's thinking, man. And y'all going out and y'all making all these bad deals and you're dragging your feet and you're not trying to be proactive. And what are you waiting on? Waiting on the Big Ten to save you again? It's not going to happen. Big Ten's not going to come out there and save you. They're not. You're probably going to, most likely what's going to happen is the four corner schools are going to get tired of the pandering and the dragging of the feet by Stanford, Cal, and Oregon and Washington to some degree. And those four teams are going to join the PAC, not the PAC, but they're going to join the Big 12. And then Oregon and Washington may be SOL at that point. So Oregon and Washington really need to react. This conference is just, it's not really a conference anymore. It's coming down to every team for themselves at this point. And if I'm Oregon and Washington, I would definitely try to get out right now while I can, because that Apple TV deal, that's a death sentence, man. And you're going to go down with a dying ship. Just like back in the day, y'all had a chance to give it BYU, but Stanford and Cal, being little piss ants that they are, oh, that's a religious school, and we don't want that in our, we don't have to play people like that. It's called having a difference of opinion. It's called having different ideas and ways of doing things. You can still coexist. And I've worked in many companies before where people were agnostic or they were atheist, and I was a Baptist, and we worked together fine. You just don't talk about that shit on the football field. When you're out there playing football, you're not tackling somebody and saying, hey, are you a Mormon? They've been screwing themselves for quite some time. And if they get Utah, Colorado, Arizona State in the mix, you get a good rivalry that's already in place with Utah and BYU. That thing's been going on for a long time. And I just think the Pac-12's, I think we're looking at the Walking Dead version of college football conferences. I don't know. You guys and gals tell me what you think about all that. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Also, there's a little heart down here. If you don't mind, hit that. Throw a few dollars in the coffers. And as always, KMCA to all the other teams. Class is now officially dismissed.